What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to bring you kind of a review and a purchase guide on choosing a CPU cooler for your desktop. And I have a few different options here. They're both similar in price range, so I thought I would kind of go over what you get going against liquid AIO cooler like this, or going an actual air cooler. So I have two different that I've used for a couple months, ran temperatures on them, kind of had an idea of what you get out of them and who they may be for, who they may not be for. So first we'll kind of break down our two options. These both run between $90 and $110. So this is a good, I think, starting point, especially if you're getting into 6, 8, 10 core CPUs, where they can be a little bit more stressful when it comes to heat, mainly because most people like to overclock their stuff a little bit. So these will give you a little bit of headroom. So the first is the Be Quiet Pure Loop. This is a 280 millimeter liquid AIO. And this actually ran on my system for about 2 months, so I have a general good idea of how it is. It comes with two 140 millimeter PWM fans. These run at 1600 RPMs, so they're a little bit different than the ones that are on the Noctua, but we'll go into that when we go into that setup. So this is something I purchased, ran on my system. I did have to run it in the front of the actual computer case here because it would not fit on the top. So that's something to take into account when you're looking at an actual liquid AIO, is to make sure the radiator will fit at the top with the fans on it. Especially if you're doing 4 fans, like a push-pull type system, you're gonna have to make sure that it fits. It does not fit in my Be Quiet 500 DX, I think is what the case is. It's not even close to fitting at the top. So this is our first option, and I'll kind of go through the second option, then give you the good, the bad, the temperatures that I get with these, and who I may think they be for, may not be for. So for the air cooler, this is what I have in my system right now. It's the Noctua, it's the NH-D15. This is the Chromax edition, and currently it's running about $110 on Amazon, and it actually is in stock. This goes out of stock fairly frequently, but I've seen it for $99. That's generally what the price is. Fluctuates between $99 and $119 depending on the time of year and if there's any sales going on, and it's been out of stock a lot, so that's something that you need to keep in mind. And I did have to buy an extra fan for it, which was another $25 for an extra fan. So there was I have two fans on that, 140 millimeters at 1500 RPMs. So I'll kind of go through the liquid first and then go through the air, and kind of why I think one may be better than the other depending on your needs. So the reason why I originally went with this is because I thought it was going to make a big difference in actual temperatures, and it turns out it doesn't. But I'll give you the numbers here. So the max on this, I use the Intel software you use to actually overclock your CPU, and the CPU I'm using is a 10 core, the Intel 10850K, and I do have it overclocked to 4.9 gigahertz. I do not push my CPU as far as I can. I want it to be as stable as possible with a little bit of overclock to give you a little bit more speed there when I need it. So I ran this for about 2 months in my system, and a few things that I noticed about it is that during the stress test, the max temperature was around 71 to 76 degrees, depending on what core it was on. And the idle temperature, or just generally using it from day to day, was about 20 to 25. And these temperatures are in Celsius. So it ran really, really cool, especially when you're doing your idling and things like that. So those are the temperatures when it's just idling and you're generally not stressing it at your CPU at 100%. It's near silent. You can barely hear this thing at all. The pump on this is actually not integrated into the actual head unit. It's actually right here. And I didn't notice any pump noise or anything, but overall I was really, really happy with this, especially for the noise when you're idling or just generally not doing a whole lot. When you stress this thing, it's just as loud as an air cooler. The fans will ramp up a significant amount, but besides that, it runs much quieter. It's just general day-to-day task and idling. Now, one negative thing about this is that since I had to mount it in the front, it was pulling in air. So it was pulling in air and basically pushing hot air into my case. So it did make my GPU run about 5 to 10 degrees warmer. The reason that that's a problem is I currently have a 980 Ti, which is on its last leg. I bought it refurbished from EVGA. It's about 3-4 years old. It needs an upgrade, but you can't find GPUs right now, so I'm trying to get all the life I can out of it. So it running 5 to 10 degrees warmer, especially when I'm video editing, which Adobe Premiere stresses your GPU more than your CPU currently. That's why I took this out of there, and I don't want to deal with the maintenance of it. So these have water in them, which degrades over time. That's how it works, and this thing gets warm, so you're going to have some precipitation with your actual water that's actually going to precipitate out of here just naturally. It does have a fuel port on it, so you can actually go through, take this off, and refill it, drain it out. But I don't want to mess with my computer. I want it to just run flawlessly for the next 4 to 5 years without touching it. So that's the two big negatives that I found, is that it pushes hot air in. This will not be a problem if you can mount it at the top, but there's no way I could have mounted this at the top. The longevity of it, I've never had one of these leak, but generally water in your case is not the best idea if you can get by with it. And I just want my computer to run. I don't want to have to mess with it, just because this is something I do on the side, so I did not want any headache there. So now getting to the air cooler. So again, Noctua NH-D15. I do have two fans in this, 140 millimeter. Their RPMs are 1500, so they go a little bit slower, but I believe the Noctua fans are a little bit better than the Be Quiet ones. That's just an opinion, but I think Noctua is kind of the gold standard when it comes to fans. So my max temperature on this was 71 to 78 for all the cores when I was stress testing the CPU. So it did run a little bit, a couple degrees warmer, but nothing anywhere near warm enough to cause any type of alarm. I believe these CPUs are rated at, they go up to 100 degrees Celsius. Would not recommend that, but when it comes to stressing these, they're pretty similar. I could probably get it to 80 degrees if I just let it run stress tests for hours on end, but overall, that's the temperature for that. And the idle's a little bit warmer, so 27 to 32 degrees Celsius for the idle, or just generally, a little photo editing, little video editing, just playing around a little bit. So it still runs very, very cool. It's extremely quiet, especially when you're not stressing it at 100%. But when you stress the CPU at 100%, the air cooler is significantly louder compared to the liquid cooler that we have here. So that's something that I did notice, is that it is a little bit louder. And that's the only negative that well, there's two negatives. That's the only real negative for most people, is going to be that it is going to be a little bit louder, and it's not going to be quite as cool, but it's going to be cool enough, I think. The other tiny negative is that you'd have to remove it to replace the RAM, or put different RAM in, at least how mine's set up. It does have plenty of RAM clearance for mine, but if I wanted to add 2 more sticks and do 4 channels, currently I have 16 gigabytes on 2. If I wanted to do 4, I would actually have to remove it and install them and put it back on. So those are the only 2 minor negatives, tons of positives. So one is you could get CPU coolers a little bit cheaper if they're air. While this one was about the same price, Noctua does make cheaper ones that are excellent CPU coolers, especially if you're not overclocking, or you just have a 4 or 6 core. You can really get, or even an 8 core, you can get a lot of headroom out of that. There's no moving parts besides the fans, and if the fans die, it still will do some passive cooling, so it's basically foolproof to where you're not going to have to do any maintenance on it. You're not going to worry about it leaking, or the pump making noise down the line, or the pump dying and not working, and then next thing you know, your CPU is running at 85 degrees. I have had a Corsair, I think it was 100, maybe an i100, that the actual pump actually did die, and I didn't notice it for 3 or 4 days until I noticed that, man, I was like, this computer's hot. That's why, because the pump died. So you don't have to worry about that. You can get them a little bit cheaper, and I just think there's more options out there for air coolers. There's all kinds of different brands, styles, budgets. They don't look as nice or as clean in the system, but the Noctua, the Chromax one, I think looks excellent in this thing. Yeah, at least in my eyes, I think it does a really good job. So that's really the only 2 comparisons, and the conclusion of this is that it does not matter. Both of these are great options. I would highly recommend both of them. I had a 360 millimeter radiator in this originally, but it actually cooled about the same or a little bit worse than this, and it was much louder. So I would just recommend a 280 if you're going to get a radiator, an AIO for your system. Just get a 280, less fans, less moving parts, less noise. So that's it. I still think air is the way to go in my eyes. I just think it's a little bit less maintenance, less headache. There's cheaper options out there. I feel like the air coolers go on sale pretty frequently. The AIO liquid ones also, but it's hard to find a cheap 280 millimeter liquid cooler. So that's it. If you have any comments, questions, leave them below. Hopefully this was helpful and will give you some type of idea of what kind of line you want to purchase. I will leave links for both of these below, so if you want to purchase them, you can do that. Have a good rest of the day, good weekend. Thanks for watching. Like this video if you like stuff like this, and I will see you guys next time.